So I wanted to do this video because one of the experiences that I had very often, especially when I was working, as I mentioned before, I worked in early childhood, but especially most recently when I was working in elementary schools in Barcelona, and I was working for these kind of well-to-do schools that are quite expensive, and therefore, how the status quo works in those kind of schools, and everybody's like very, very, very into their little assigned roles and everything like that. So, um, I always feel that I think the type of person I am, the way I am with kids, a lot of kids are normally drawn to me, and I'm very receptive. um, I can see children, I feel like, for whom they are, if that makes any sense. Even when they're not like perfect kids. I mean, I know a kid from, I've been working from the time I was like 19, I've been working with kids, right? So I can tell a kid who, and I'm not gonna lie, there's just some kids out there that just be like badass kids. Yes, but there might be another reason. But like the only time I'd ever like be like, my goodness, this kid's annoying, and that's the most I would probably ever say, is because like they're being very rude or they're very disrespectful or something like this. And I don't deal with older kids. I don't deal with junior high school, because you know that that's what you're going to get at those ages. But with the young ones, at least they're young, and you can still kind of, look over certain things to some degree. So I've never been in a position where I felt like overwhelming dislike of a child. I've never felt that in all the years that I've been working. Um, and like I said, I'm human. I have kids. My kids also sometimes get on my nerves, and I might be like, ah. But I mean, for the most part, I've always worked with early childhood. So I've never had those kind of feelings, right? The most it would be is that, like, I noticed that there's a kid that, for whatever reason, it's just in him that he just does like mean things to other kids. And then things like that I will not like. And then I will usually try to, like, I would have tried to speak to his parents or try to find ways around the behavior to make him understand what he was doing is not nice, or something like this, right? But for the most part, like, I could always tell the difference between a kid who's acting out because also they have like special needs, right? There's a difference. And even kids who like might like hit others because they have special needs and all that, like, sometimes that like they're doing it because like they just have no self-control. Like they're just kind of like, they just get up and just like swing, or you know what I mean? So but I know the difference. I can feel the difference. I know the difference, and I can see these kind of things between kids. So I've never just kind of blatantly just said like mean things like that kid is just annoying and disgusting, like there's demonic or they're the devil's spawn. But surprisingly, I've worked with teachers, and I've seen all kinds of teachers, and especially like, working in nursery and all these kind of things. And I'll be the first one to tell you, after working in early child care, like, if you could stay home with your kids, I would definitely recommend that always, at least until they're like able to talk and tell you what's going on. Because you have all sorts of folks around, in these kind of fields. And I was always very fortunate that I was able to stay home with at least the last couple of kids, or that they were with people who I really trusted. Because now, after I know what I know in the simulation, it makes it even harder. Makes it even harder. Like, I don't know what I would do, like, if I were in the future to have another child. You know what I mean? Obviously, I would try to stay home. But anyways, back to the main point. So I've worked in schools, especially these kind of schools where the teachers would say the most horrendous things about children sometimes. And it was always surprising to me, because some of the kids that they would make these remarks about, in reality, in my opinion, I always tended to think that they were like really good kids, or I really liked them. I always ended up like really liking them. Um, I would try to find ways, like if I saw that they were a little bit hyper, to like give them activities to do that could, like, they could like put that kind of their energy into something productive. You know what I mean? I would find a way. But I was shocked. It was always shocking to me how they would talk about the kids, and I always thought it was like just kind of weird. And what's interesting is, like, afterwards, at these jobs, those same teachers that in the beginning, like I said, like, I guess before they knew your narrative or they knew who you are in the spirit or whatever. Like when you first arrive, like they would sometimes like start like confiding in you and telling you these things. By the end of the year, like these same kind of teachers were the ones that would do a lot of weird, sneaky things, or I would overhear saying a lot of sneaky things about me or try to get me fired or something. And you know, I mean, they couldn't really get me fired in that sense, but like at the last jobs where I was at, the last one I left because like I said, I left to France. But the one before that was like so weird because I had been working there without any problems or anything like that. And then it was like at the end of the year, like that's when I wrote in my memoirs like they started acting weird or like looking at you, and I was like thinking like maybe they were seeing my posts on TikTok about like outer body experiences or something. Like I was thinking like I was noticing the reaction of how they just started acting weird, like as if someone would had come to the job and told them something about me. And I just thought that was weird because I had a lot of my stuff, even my social media, it was like private, and I didn't have my brand or anything yet. So again, this phenomena didn't only happen at these last two jobs, but it happened at other previous jobs. And I write about this. It was as if like, you know, I could be there. Like there was one I was there like 2 years, and then it was like at the like right before the targeting really got more pronounced. Like the coworkers just started acting like really weird with me, and I was like, "What the heck is going on?" And it was just really strange. But the point of this is like again where I'm talking about it is like I always wonder now knowing what I know about myself and who I am and everything. I always wonder if like the reason why maybe the Matrix or these, I don't know if they were parasitics, I don't know if they were just typical bots, whatever they were, these kind of institutions. Obviously I know if I had remained in those kind of jobs, like I wouldn't feel as free to be as open in social media and write what I want to write and talk about these kind of spiritual topics, because you'd always be worried like someone's going to think this or think that, or find your stuff online and think you're weird or something like that. So I understand that like I think for me to grow and be as open as I could, like it's better that obviously I feel free and I could still work, tutoring or doing other things, but not in that kind of environment where everything is like the reputation of the school and you're very you're instilled this kind of idea that like you have to, for the little chump change that they give you, follow this kind of like protocol of this and that and be someone you're not, right? And just play along and follow along and be part of like the little status quo. But I always feel now that like maybe they didn't want me around the kids because I was too compassionate, or maybe like, I'm not the one to make, to continue on with the programming, you know what I mean? On the contrary, it makes me wonder because like I said, a lot of the times they would, come to me and speak to me about a child that, they had the year before or something like this, or, and they would tell you all these things to already try to fill your mind with biases. You know what I mean? And I never really listened to them. Like, I didn't care what they said. Like, I was always going to be like, well, I'll see how they really act. And 9 times out of 10, I never had any problems with the kids. I never had any problems with their parents. And it didn't apply to the child, all of these things that they were saying about them. So it made me wonder, like, maybe they thought that also, that I wasn't playing along with the narrative that they wanted to already throw on top of these kids from young, you know what I mean? To start them off on the track of being um I don't know. I don't even know, like singled out in some ways or treated differently in some ways. And yeah, I don't know. It's just pretty interesting because like that's my theory at this point, is that they didn't want me to spark anything in these young souls, that are coming into this world, because they especially are already coming in on a higher vibration. But yeah, I don't know. I just had that reflection. I just wanted to share that. So be real careful if you have kids in school, and just know that these institutions are there. They are government training facilities. They are not there to enlighten your children. That's all I wanted to say.